Video games can be food for the soul if you let them be. Calming, meditative experiences, as long as you don't touch the competitive multiplayer. Yet sometimes, like a stale crumb in your bedsheet, it takes one thing to ruin an otherwise comfortable experience. I'm Jess from WhatCulture. Here are 10 video game levels that made you turn the console off. Number 10, LA Noire, a different kind of war. It would be unfair to call LA Noire a one-note game. While being a detective is its core mechanic, mixing in shooting and driving into the fold adds some levity to proceedings. There's only so many times you can watch Phelps yell without provocation at someone before you call it a day. When it's done right, it's great. Car chases through 1940s Los Angeles and gunfights with the Black Dahlia murderer in dank underground church passages are tense and exhilarating. These are the high points. It would be hard to quantify what players would want from a finale to this game, but for many, this wasn't it. It's not that it's terrible, it's just such a slog that many lost interest so close to the end. Played out in 5 parts, switching between Phelps and rival-come-reluctant ally Jack Kelso, the final sections were pure attrition. Running after bad guys with a flamethrower would be fun in any other game, but in a game that favored grilling questions over flaming gameplay, it was unexpected and more trial and error than necessary. How do you make a flamethrower section bad? Seriously. Number 9, Mafia Definitive Edition, Fair Play. Driving in a sandbox game wasn't a new mechanic by the time Mafia came about, nor were races in sandbox games either. So by 2002, you'd think players would have this concept sussed out by now. Drive around a bit, avoid others, come first, standard, right? Step up the ironically named Fair Play from the first Mafia game. Now, quick caveat. With 2020's definitive version, there is a new control and accessibility layout for the more modern or casual gamer. However, those that remember the original or were going in blind with the classic scheme were in for a shock. Fair Play is well documented, but like the Nuremberg trials, it's not for good reason. Probably about the same amount of torture involved too. You see, you're a mafioso. Tommy Angelo started as a cabbie, not a champion racer, which is very evident when you step in for the actual driver and have to win this race. How hard can it be, you wonder? Let's just say you'd have more fun with an overburdened shopping trolley with a missing wheel and locks on the other 3. Number 8, Alien Isolation, a synthetic solution. What makes Alien Isolation one of the best horror games ever, and yes, I mean that, is the sense of sheer dread it instills. It sets a slow boil, always keeping you on your toes with what's around the corner, or in the walls, or in the vents. You get what I mean. The uncomfortable feeling of dread, the looming xenomorphic presence, or the overzealous working Joe androids traipsing the halls is bad enough. Much like Outcast or Amnesia, the fear comes from the minimal. That you can arm yourself is a bonus, but you're not your mother. Ripley Jr. is not equipped to take down the hordes. Defense is the name of the game. So when players were confronted with almost a dozen androids coming at you at once, it was enough to make you panic. Oh, and they're on fire too. It was such a jarring shift in tone from slow horror to bombastic action piece, it was enough to put those who weren't expecting it off. If you knew it was coming, you could home alone it and lay traps, hoping for the best. If you didn't, the quickest way off that rock is turning the game off. Number 7, Dead Island, Escort Missions. Despite it being rough around the edges and immediately surpassed by Dying Light, Dead Island had some strong points going for it. For starters, it's an open-world zombie game. This was in a time when zombies weren't yet the lazy shorthand for DLC, with fans excited at the prospect. With a decent campaign and the ability to play with friends and take out the undead in a variety of wacky ways, it was great. Whittling a zombie down to low health with a boat oar before booting it over a high ledge will never get on your nerves. What will, however, are the survivors that need escorting. You'd think surviving would be their priority, right? Apparently not, as like a hyperactive child, turning your back on them for a second will see them sprinting off in another direction. Somehow, it's worse if you give them a weapon to defend themselves. They'll charge into battle like one of the 300 and often end up dying. Like the 300. It's enough to make players throw their hands up towards the off button. Number 6, Deus Ex Human Revolution, the boss fights. Now this refers to the original release, not the director's cut. The fact that it happened in the first place merits a mention though. The principle behind the Deus Ex games is being able to play it your way. Obviously there are restrictions, but the core nature is being able to cater your own playstyle. For the most part across the series, this is reflected well in the gameplay. Whether you want to go in guns and augments blazing or collecting dust in the vents, that's entirely up to you, which is great and well implemented. until you come across the boss fights. Put all your points in stealth and hacking, did we? Yeah, good luck with that. They don't care and will make short work of Jensen's minimally armored body in no time. If you were savvy enough to stock up on Typhoon rounds and buy the necessary skill, you might be alright. Maybe. But the problem with the fights is the lack of pomp and ceremony prior. If you didn't know they were coming, you'd be caught short. The world doesn't need saving that badly. Number 5. Marvel's Spider-Man, any MJ Watson stealth level. The greatest part of any Spider-Man game is the sense of being Spider-Man. Some games have pulled it off, others have tweaked it and missed on a few notes. Marvel's Spider-Man, Insomniac's 2018 offering, nails being the webhead beautifully. The traversal, the combat, the very essence of living vicariously through being a superhero is done so well. So what could possibly ruin this cake like a toenail atop the icing? Not playing as Spider-Man in a Spider-Man game. They may be pertinent to the story, but the Mary Jane Watson missions are like pulling teeth. She's great as a character, not so much fun when it's an instant game over when spotted, which can happen if you didn't anticipate enemies turning on a dime or not hitting the preset distraction item at the right moment. Frustrating would be putting it mildly. More akin to tantrum-inducing, and practicing your swear words would be more accurate. It's enough to bring the game to a halt. That's how bad they are. As are the Miles Morales ones to a degree, but they're less frequent than MJ's. Number 4. The Messenger, Dark Cave. Whilst The Messenger is a cracking game in its own right, the phrase "be careful what you wish for" comes to mind. We all love a bit of retro in the wake of old school Ninja Gaiden and Battletoads, but when developers give us exactly that, players have some right tantrums when they hit difficulty spikes. You know, just like Ninja Gaiden and Battletoads. The proverbial turbo tunnel in this instance is the appropriately named Dark Cave. It's not called the Slightly Dimpsy Cave for good reason. It's pitch black is my point. So that players are expected to navigate a completely dark cave with no prior expectation for an essential part of the story was too much. At least with Turbo Tunnel you can quickly see what's coming. With Dark Cave you get zilch if you've entered a blind, no pun intended. Now before you object, there is a way around this in the form of a candle. Of course, true to its old school nature, it's not a straightforward process of simply finding it conveniently outside the entrance. But if you didn't work that one out, you'd be raging in the darkness. Or quitting. Number 3. Ghost of Tsushima, The Undying Flame. Like a lot of open world games, Sucker Punch's Ghost of Tsushima becomes formulaic over time. That's just a fact, not criticism. It doesn't make Jin Sakai's quest boring, you just fall into the rhythm of collectibles and side quests. At least that's what I did. For the most part, the side missions make up an interesting amount of deviation from the main story. And for the most part, they're entertaining enough. Not the Undying Flame though. Spicing up gameplay variations is all well and good, but making them timed and frustrating is not. From a narrative perspective, sure, it's a worthy tale of a lone warrior conquering climbs and the elements to reveal a legendary skill. From a gameplay perspective, playing a timed hill climb against the weather is just such a chore, and not a fun one at that. This is a Jin who's only recently gotten into the swing of, swinging. To be expected to scale a mountain like an ibex without freezing to death is a bit of an ask. Much as the flaming sword is cool, the flame and hassle to get it is sheer annoyance. Number 2. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain, Metallic Archaea. This isn't a criticism on shoehorned action pieces in MGS games. The tower section in Metal Gear Solid, the last stand with Snake in MGS2, or even the bike scene in Snake Eater are all equally amazing in their own right. No, the issue with Metallic Archaea is not that it's out of place, it's just massively deviant from the rest of the missions. Battling Sahelanthropus by comparison is thematic. It's a friggin' Metal Gear game, of course there'd be a giant robot battle. Fighting the heavily armored skulls, though, isn't fun. It's a pain in the ass, especially if you haven't sufficiently invested in a decent arsenal to take them down. But Jess, I hear you say, I've been leveling all my weapons up just because. Alright, good for you. But for many players who'd focused on the stealth, it was a jarring shift that we were unprepared for. Having to go back and grind resources to be able to stand a chance was a phantom pain in the ass. You can't even elude these skulls either. The game turns into a straight up shooter and you have to take them out or neutralize them to progress. Number 1. Sekiro Shadow Side Twice, The Folding Screen Monkeys. While Sekiro leans on the occasional stealth moment from its developer Tenshu roots, it's still very much a From Software game. And like any other Soulsborne game, it relies on you getting stuck in and learning the hard way. When you do get the mechanics down, it's great, as you'll be making waves through the likes of Genichino Ashina in no time. So you're on the quest to find the mortal blade. What's the next boss that stands in your way? The folding screen monkeys. 4 elusive, wily, and downright frustrating simians. Imagine getting so hyped after Genichiro, a halfway point that makes or breaks many. You're pumped, you're the master shinobi, no one can test your mettle. You want to take on all corners with your sword and skill. Except those bastard monkeys don't want to take you on. Utilizing twisted mechanics based on the old see, hear, and speak no evil concept, these lads will soon take the wind out of your sails in no time. You can spend hours trying to outsmart them, and to some, it's just not worth the hassle. Keep your damn immortality severing blade then. Let me know down in that comment section which video game levels made you turn a console off. I've been Jess for WhatCulture. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. You can come say hi to me on my Twitter where I'm at Jess McDonald, but do stay tuned to us here as well for plenty more content.